Hello everyone, welcome to this ICMP Masterclass. I'm Jason O'Brien. I am the current head of the MACMP course, which is a Masters in Music Production. We've got a really exciting masterclass ahead of us today. There will be opportunities for you all to ask questions, and I would request that if you could please do that via the Q&A tab at the bottom of Zoom rather than using the chat. That would be better, and we can make sure we get through your questions. A little bit later, there's going to be a session shared by a guest using software called Audio Movers, which will allow you to stream high quality audio into your computer by clicking on a link, which will be shared later. Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to welcome you to a very talented recording, mix and mastering engineer. Someone who's worked with Stormzy, Dave, Craig David, Chic, Callum Scott, London Grammar, Kano, Scouting for Girls, Birdie, Gorillaz, Muck, Matt Cardle, John Newman, Little Mix, and Kasabian. Also worked for a few years with Fraser T Smith, who is an ex-ICMP alumni, as a regular engineer and mixer. In 2017, won the MPG Breakthrough Engineer of the Year for her work with Kano and Gavin James, and in 2018, was the MPG Recording Engineer of the Year for her work on London Grammar's Truth is a Beautiful Thing and Stormzy's Gang Signs and Prayer. So please extend a warm ICMP welcome to Miss Manon Grandjean.
Hi, hi Jason. Hello.
Out of breath there with all those credits. Blimey.
Hi everyone.
It's quite a nice little list you've got going there. I'm sure there's many others that we haven't covered, but there's some pretty impressive ones on that list, isn't there?
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you very much for coming and joining with us tonight. I wondered if I could ask you how you first got into audio engineering, what your kind of story is in terms of how you began interesting yourself in music and what your pathway was into the industry.
Yeah, so I was classically trained on guitar when I was probably like 8 or something. So I did, I think about 8 years. Right. My family was quite musical. My dad was playing guitar. He was playing banjo. Wow. My mum loved opera. So we used to, I remember going to the opera with her when I was quite young, like 12, 13, which is maybe a bit unusual. Yeah. But very like musical background, and I was always interested into science. So I had a fairly common scientific background. So I did like math and physics and stuff like that in high school. I don't know, like what was it, college or and then I went to do I sort of went into a physics degree because I wanted to get into all the programs that I wanted to get into to do audio engineering needed a degree, right, to go in. So so I did that, and during that degree I did an internship in a studio in south of France, and that's when, without really knowing what engineering really was, and I sort of had an idea. I was 18 at that point. I sort of had an idea, but wasn't like, it wasn't very precise. And so when I went there for 2 months. It was like a summer internship, and I loved it so much. And the engineer there showed me so many things, and you know, the role of the engineer, mixing. So from that on, I was like, this is really what I want to do. And so I finished my degree and went on to a audio engineering course in Brittany in France, and did 3 years of like full-on audio engineering to get a master's degree.
Fantastic.
And yeah, so that's, and for the last year, I needed to do a 6 months internship to validate all my studies, and I decided I wanted to go abroad to do that. Yeah. So I did a couple of months in Paris, in a studio in Paris called Sequenza, and I did my other internship at a studio called Livingston in North London, in Wood Green. Yeah. And at the end of it, they offered me some work as an assistant, kind of runner slash assistant, and I stayed. I stayed since then.
Fantastic. I heard that your first sort of assisting job was with someone quite notable. Is that correct at Livingston?
The one I think that you're thinking of wasn't at Livingston.
Okay.
So basically, I was like a runner assistant at Livingston, and
Yeah.
I, as everybody could think of, like, could think that on the first year I didn't have that much work. It was very sporadic, like a day here and there, because they had staff, they had in-house, assistants and engineer already. So I sent a lot of CVs out and went to see studios, and I found this other studio called State of the Art Studios,
Oh,
and
yes. I remember you said.
in Richmond. And the manager said to me, well, you can come in on the session, whatever, a couple of days later or something, and you can be a runner slash assistant. There will be an assistant there already. But it was quite a big session with a big setup. So they said, we definitely will need an extra pair of hands. And it was for Noel Gallagher. So,
Wow.
yeah, it was quite an intense feeling for me, because I didn't really know the studio that well. And there was a lot of gear, like the engineer brought a lot of stuff, and there was probably about 20 guitars and 20 guitar amps, and
Yeah.
in addition to what was already in the studio. So you can imagine that probably about 50 guitars.
But
It was a bit insane.
quite high pressure straight away, I would have thought.
Quite high pressure. We had
Yeah.
to set up straight away and sort out all the extra gear that came in. I think we had maybe 20 Neve preamps that came in addition of like a lot of other stuff, a lot of old analog gear. So yeah, that was quite a first day.
I bet.
in that place. But
It sounds
yeah.
amazing. So would you have any advice for our students making their first steps in as a runner? Because you've obviously done that route yourself. Is there anything that you would advise people or give them some tips as to how you survive that kind of that part of the industry to make your way through to where you are today?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that I was thinking, oh well, I've got a master's degree in audio engineering, so I'm gonna be, I'm gonna be fine. I'm gonna get in and gonna start recording people, and obviously this is not really how it works in sort of big commercial studios. So you have to, be prepared to be a runner and be like, okay, well, I'm gonna make teas and coffees and make sure everyone is okay and comfortable and happy, and assist as much as I can on the technical stuff.
Yeah.
But there will be an engineer and an assistant anyway already. So it's just knowing where you fit in and what your role is, and not trying to impress people, but within within your role. So if you're going to make teas and coffees, just do it really well and make sure people are like topped up with drinks all the time, and not trying to be the producer,
Yeah, it's
because
kind of more of a
that's,
hospitality role in that position, isn't it? Where you're just making everyone comfortable and working
yeah.
your way through the different jobs, isn't it?
But you realize how important that is, like the further you go along, because that part of, like, I still make tea for people. I still make
Mm.
sure they're good. Whenever I have artists coming to see me, or I do sessions in studios and I'm on my own, like you have to be hospitable all the time. It doesn't matter if you're the runner, the producer, the engineer, you
Yeah.
know, you always have to do that. So I think for the students, I would say just persevere. If that's what you want to do, you're not going to be a runner all your life. Like slowly, you'll get an assisting role, and as I was the assistant, the sort of house assistant at State of the Art, and then one day there was not really an engineer on the session, and I knew the producers, and they were like, well, you're going to engineer because you know the studio well. And that was for London Grammar, and that was my first engineering job. So you know, it's just like all that patience and all the work that you put in as a runner and an assistant will eventually pay off, because people see that you're a good assistant, so they will give you a chance, and or see that you're a good runner, so they will give you a chance on the next position.
Yeah, and I guess it's being someone that people would want to be in the studio with them as much as the skills, isn't it? It's if
Exactly.
they will remember you if you made them feel good by making sure they were looked after, and you know you were positive. They were going to want to have you in the
Exactly.
studio with them when they're being creative.
Yeah, and I always said in so many times that all the jobs in the studios, as you know, producers, engineers, it's 50% your like your human interaction and 50% your actual technical skills.
Yeah.
Because if you can't have like 100%. You could be like a tech genius and super fast on Pro Tools, but if you're not interacting with people the right way, or if you can't read people, then that's not, you know, it's not going to work, and vice versa. You know, you still need to have those skills, those technical skills, to be called back. But
yeah, so you're obviously very, very good at that, because you seem to have managed to propel yourself through running into some fairly major projects. You worked with Fraser T Smith, and he was, I guess, someone that you met. Was that at Livingston?
No, so that
State of
was
the art.
at no, that was at RAC. So
Oh, at RAC,
so
sorry, yeah.
so basically, I started at Livingston, and then for a while I was working at Livingston and State of the Art for like in parallel, and then I slowly went on to. At one point, I was like fully at State of the Art, like all full time.
Yeah.
And then I went on to like work at RAC as well. And not at Livingston anymore. So just like RAC and State of the Art at the same time. And I did meet Fraser on the session. And again, a good example here is that I was the assistant on the session. He already had his own engineer. And it was only not even a day. I think it was like half a day. And on his next session that he was doing at his studio, his engineer was not available, or I think she moved away. And so they called me to see if I could, you know, do a trial session. And I was like, yeah, sure. And I did a few sessions as a freelance engineer, and then he was really happy and said, you know, I want, you know, to have an engineer full time, because he's very busy and like doing a lot of projects. So I said, yeah, I
full-time engineer for Fraser T Smith rather than freelancing around different studios.
I mean, they both have advantages, and you know, freelancing is great in some ways and not so great in other ways. But I think I was like really grateful to take that next step onto, because I always seen sort of one side, like when you know bands or artists are coming into the studio with already done songs, they just, you know, need to record drums or whatever for how long, how many days, and then they go, and I never see sort of the after that, what happens after all the editing and all the production, and I think with Fraser it was great, because I could see some like a song like starting from the beginning when he was writing with people, to like really see the whole thing until the end, and like recording it in the studio, mixing it, and sometimes even mastering it, and then delivering that song. So it was a great, I worked with him for 5 years, and yeah, I think that's a lot of what I'm doing now is everything that you do like along the way in your career, you pick up so much things, but yeah, like definitely a lot of the mixing tips and skills that I got from him, because I wasn't really mixing before that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Could you tell me a bit about your kind of the workflow that you would use with Fraser T Smith? I read that you would sort of record his output of Ableton, and it was more of a kind of maybe a more kind of live feel to the way songs were written. Is that, would that be an accurate thing to say, or?
Yeah, definitely. I think so he had his own studio in Parsons Green, and basically, as opposed to commercial studios where you have to, set up everything at the beginning of a session and then pack up everything at the end, everything was always set up. And I think that's where what you found in a lot of producer writer studios, that everything is sort of ready to go, so people can just jump in on a piano, on a guitar, or go in the vocal booth, and then that's ready to go. So we perfected like chains that we both liked on like various things, so like pianos, and we had a drum kit set up as well. So we just like chose the right chains that we wanted, and then basically at the beginning of a session I was just putting everything on record, everything that was available, like all the keys, all the pianos, and like anything. And then so people could just, if they were writing and jamming, that they could just jump on something and it would be recorded.
Right.
So then we had like a live mic as well in the room, as quite standard. And so after, maybe they would be jamming and stuff, and then after about an hour they would be like, okay, well, let's listen back to what we've done, and if there was anything worth keeping, then we would keep that, and maybe take loops from certain parts, like or maybe that drum pattern was quite cool, so let's do that, take that and loop it around, and then maybe they would jam again over that.
Would it be multi-tracked or just a sort of stereo recording? I mean, would it be like recording a rehearsal, or would it be actually streamed in a multi-track way?
Oh no, it would be multi-track, because I always wanted to be able to edit and keep it if that's the take, and if that's I want it to be as good as possible and as flexible as possible for me later on, to work with. Yeah, definitely.
So can you think of any sort of notable projects that started off that way that people would know, like in terms of his productions? Would there be quite a few that would start?
Oh yeah, I mean, like all the Stormzy first album tracks that Fraser did, they started that way, with Stormzy just putting down ideas on the live mic, just and then like a lot of it would never be used. It would be just ideas, and sometimes you've got 20 ideas and then just one makes it at the end of the day, or not even. I mean, it's always quite a long, it was like over quite a long period of time. So yeah, all the Stormzy stuff, all the Dave stuff. Sometimes we would get maybe a beat from another producer, and maybe we'll be jamming on top of that. It's quite flexible, but definitely a lot of things started that way in the studio. Definitely
a lot of kind of live performance, as opposed to sort of programming meticulously on a computer to get the ideas going. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, and I think it would be a mixture of stuff actually, also because Fraser would also program on Ableton, for example. So there would be maybe some programming going on, but also some live stuff playing at the same time. So always like a bit of both.
Yeah, I was just wondering. So he's using Ableton, and you're capturing this in Pro Tools, I presume.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit about perhaps why you might choose to do that, to do stuff within Pro Tools, or did you use Logic at all in any of your writing, or?
No, I mean, I've always been a Pro Tools, because I think it's kind of I mean, for me, it's what I prefer to record on. I think it's great for like multi-track recording, and so he would, I think for him creatively, Pro Tools is not the best. So so he would be on Ableton on another rig, and I would maybe during the session I would just record a stereo out of Ableton as a reference while I was recording other live stuff happening. And then later on, what we used to do is I used to separate usually into 16 all the parts that he would do in Ableton and run that through, you know, he had a UTA, Undertone Audio Desk. So I used to like run that, like 16 channels of that and through various compressors and then just record that back into Pro Tools. So I would have a bit more of a mixed backing track if that was part of the backing track. And I could just play around a bit more and have that analog back into quite a digital world because, you know, obviously a lot of beats are only made, even though they're made from samples most of the time, but it's all very very digital and there's not much live going on in it. So just running it through, you know, like valve compressors and just it's more fun as well. It was quite fun for me to do. Just thinking, oh, what could I do? That there's a string, this stereo string. What could I put that through?
Run it through. So I sort of read that you were running sort of things through tape machine, like old cassette type tape machines, and even old sort of vintage sampler input, mic inputs, and things like that to sort of get some dirt and crunch into the sounds.
So for example, like strings or pianos, he got this little I can't remember the model now, but like an old cassette player, and I was like, oh, what would that sound through that? And you know, I've tried a few things through it, and then maybe it's just maybe one part of the piano that's maybe like a solo thing, and it's quite nice to have that bit of a wobble and a bit of an old sound. It's more like as a little effect, as a little taste thing, and that would work maybe for one thing, and then, you know, it's just those little fun things that you can try. And then the Akai sampler was basically running the bass through the mic input, so it would be really distorted, and that would just be that sort of top end fuzz that you need on really low sub basses that don't really cut through on small speakers.
That would be parallel kind of processing.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Alongside the original bass line.
Yes. Yeah.
So a bit of distortion bass.
Yeah, and just quite low, but just to have that coming through on smaller speakers. Obviously, when the sub is really low.
So do you have any tips for kind of getting the classic sort of low sub bass? You know, you obviously mixed Stormzy's album. You won an MPG award for for that, which was fantastic. When you were mixing that, did you have any kind of techniques for getting really nice sort of bass, sub bass out of those tracks? Or
yeah, I mean, the UTA EQ that's on the Fraser's desk is amazing to get like harmonics on the low end. So I would usually have like a bump around like 30 hertz, and then in the box I would use sometimes Voice of God or R bass from Waves, which I love, which is in the session that I would show later, which is one that I use all the time.
Session.
Yeah. So yeah, just that, or there was another one I think called harmonics something. I can't remember now, but there's a few like low like harmonic plugins out there, generators out there that can definitely help with that.
If you don't mind, Manon, if we hand over to Ariana Amato, one of our production students, I believe she wants to ask some questions. Hi, Ariana.
Hello. Hi, guys.
Hey there.
Hi.
That's okay.
Hi, Ariana.
Hey. Hey. So I just want to say that I really like your mixes. They're very elegant. Well done. I really enjoy it.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I wanted to ask you a few questions on what's your experience of being like a woman engineer, because there's obviously an imbalance in the audio music industry. So do you feel you are one of the few women engineers in this field?
I think there's, when I started, I didn't know any. And I think because I've been sort of doing it for a few years now, I know I'm a bit more aware of other women engineers, and I've met a few, and I think now there's a lot more being done about it. So, and I think a lot of awareness is raised about that too. So, and actually the girl Violet Skies, the artist that was playing, she does like writing camps and stuff like that, especially for women, for like women artists, producers, engineers, to sort of try, and she does it like all over Europe. So she did one in the UK, in Stockholm, Berlin. So I think there's a lot happening now, which I'm delighted to see, and I always want to encourage like women, like students and even younger, to sort of to get into those, because when I was looking into it, when I was maybe 16, 17, I didn't have that many other like women engineers. Yeah, so I think now it's changing a lot, and that's great, and I think that imbalance is slowly getting
Cool.
better.
It's really nice to hear that things are going better. So,
Yeah.
I mean, did you have the opportunity to work and collaborate with other women identifying or gender non-conforming engineers?
Yeah, I mean, I know a few women engineers, and I've worked. There was a few at one point at Rack Studios. We were 1, 2, 3. I think we were 3 female engineers, and management. The 2 managers are also women, and I know that in Abbey Road they're also trying to encourage women to come forward as well, to get into like the runner positions, or the they have like a yearly position as well. So definitely I've worked with quite a few now, which has been maybe in the last maybe 4 or 5 years that it's really like developed, and I'm delighted, because it's great to not be the only woman in the room anymore. Yeah.
Nice to hear. Regarding your work, do you always like get credit? Do you have a manager that helps you like managing your credit in work and this kind of things, or you do it by yourself?
So when I was a runner or an assistant or even an engineer, I didn't have management, and it's really hard because obviously all the stuff that I did with Fraser, I was doing the label copies. So the label copy is what you send to the label with all the credits on. So obviously I was making sure I was credited, but that process when you're a freelance engineer is really, because you do so many sessions, it's difficult to keep track of. And also people at the end, the person who's putting that label copy together, 9 times out of 10 forgets who engineered what on, because it goes through so many different stages and different people. So I definitely didn't get credited for stuff that I did before, but you have to
compromise a little bit.
Yeah, and I think if I was the main engineer on the whole album and I didn't get credited, I would be really upset. But there's nothing much that we can do. I know that the MPG are doing something called credit when credit is due, and it's to get people credited properly, because I think it's really important, especially at the beginning when you're trying to build up your portfolio of stuff. But now as a mixer, I've got management, and yeah, I make sure that I'm always credited, and they always ask. It's weird that labels tend to ask mixers, but they don't really ask engineers. Which I think
probably they assume that they work on a flat rate or then being credited and stuff.
Yeah, it's it's coming back to what I was saying to Jason about the work of engineers, maybe sometimes not like credited enough, really, because a lot of engineers do a lot of work, and yeah, it's a bit heartbreaking when you did so much and then you don't get a mention. It's definitely not a nice feeling. But then yeah, all the things I did with Fraser, I was credited, and now as well. So I think also you have to take it, sometimes there's nothing that you can do unless you really get onto the labels and be like, hey, I've done this and this, can you add me? Sometimes you don't even know who to go to anyway, so it's a hard one.
So yeah, it's nicer now that you have someone helping you on this side. It's going to be easier, but I guess at the beginning you just need to compromise a little bit. So yeah, is there like any experience do you want to share with us about the things that we talked about a bit?
I mean, I said it before that is it regarding like being a woman and with that imbalance? It's just I've been really lucky, and I know there's so many negative experience out there, and I know they exist, and
it's nice to hear uplifting and positive experience.
Yeah, I really want to be the sort of the one where maybe I had a bit of what they call like mansplaining, or I don't know, but I usually like shrug that off, and it doesn't sort of affect me that much. But I never had any, like, people that I've worked with always have been like so kind and so accepting, and really seen me being a woman like a really a positive thing, and be like, oh, this is so great to have, usually female artists really respond well to it as well, because they don't feel like they're in a room with a lot of guys, and so it's just restoring that sort of natural environment, which when you go out in the street, you've got a mix of everything, and it's nice to have that in the studio as well. So I didn't really have
the real world in the studio as well.
And I didn't really have any negative experience in the studios here. I mean, like I said, everyone's been so positive, so I really want to like share that as well, because I know there's a lot of bad, but there's also a lot of good, and there are a lot of good people in this industry too.
Nice. That's really important to say, and put the positive experience forward sometimes, because as you said, there are a lot of nice people in this industry. Cool. So thank you so much for answering my question. I'm gonna hand the question to the student and back to Jason for the rest of the session.
Thank you,
Arina. Nice to see you. Thank you very much. So we have a few questions that have come in through the Q&A section, which I'm going to read out in order in which they arrived. So the first one was, how would you suggest approaching a producer / sound engineer, and what would you suggest that an artist should show you to show what the artist themselves wants the music to sound like? And I guess this is kind of relating to your maybe using reference demos and things like that. How would you kind of interpret what an artist would want, I guess, if you weren't familiar with their tastes or their music particularly?
I mean, usually how to contact people, I think nowadays you can go through, everyone does it, so you can go through the social media routes, and you can go through the formal routes if people have websites or management, and I always respond to whoever send me a message on my website or a DM or whatever. And I think it's really it's easier now, I think, to get in touch with people. And it's just getting, I think the demo in any sort of shape they're in is always a good indicator of what they want to sound like. And also just referencing maybe other artists, not saying that they want to be the same, but just in the lane of so and so. I think it's always quite helpful as well, to just not go to a completely different direction. But I think, yeah, just like reference mixes or demos, I think are a good indicator of what they want to do.
Okay, and when you mix, are you kind of when you submit your kind of your first mix to an artist, are you kind of anticipating probably doing revisions and things like that? Do you kind of build that into your kind of process, that you're expecting some revisions to come back from an artist?
Yeah, I think I know there's a bit of different opinions about this, and I think it's mainly down to time for maybe very big mixers or very busy mixers, that they maybe don't want to do 25 revisions. But I would always want the artist or the producer, or the whole team, to be happy with the end result. And I think if mix one is the one, then happy days. But it's quite rare that happens. And I think within the mixing world is kind of the holy grail of mixes, like mix one, yay. But I really don't mind doing revisions, and people are usually very good at pointing out what they like and what they don't like and what they want to change. And it's really easy, just go through the notes that they send me back, and I can just do the revision and send it. And usually it's around maybe 3-4 revisions.
So there's quite a bit of work that happens after you sort of maybe consider that you finished a mix, and you probably build that into your expectations. So to be disappointed when they say, "Oh, I want you to change this or that."
Well, I think it's always I always send the first mix thinking, well, okay, this is what I'm presenting, and I love it as it is. But because with music, it's such a personal thing and a taste. Everyone has different taste, and I think you have to take it. Most of the time, people are not saying to me, "Oh, your attack on that compressor is not right." They just say, "Oh, could you turn that little bit down half a dB?" I mean, it's very personal taste. So I think it's not a criticism on how you mix the track. I think it's just how to get that little extra, maybe 5%, on how they really want to hear it, which only them can tell you. Because I think as good as the mix engineers can be, it's not their track. So it's like I don't really mind doing revisions within reason. But
you're interpreting their creative work at the end of the day. You are a piece of you're not the artist. So I suppose you have to rely on the artist to tell you whether you've managed to convey the message and the feeling of the music for them. And you can't really argue with that, can you?
Yeah, no, for sure. And sometimes if it's not quite right, then I'm thinking, oh well, I didn't really get it. And sometimes it gets I need a bit more time maybe to get it right. And it happens, like in life, you don't get stuff right the first time all the time. So you have to take all this as growth, not as criticism.
Yeah, good. I was going to ask as well, just something. A question from me is, when you are mixing a track, would you kind of have like a sort of strategy in terms of how much you expose yourself to the music when you're working on it? Would you like take frequent breaks, or would you want to sleep on a mix before you sent it back to the artist, before you kind of commit to this is my mix? Or how do you approach that kind of angle with the mix?
It's hard, I think, because there's no right. I think it's very personal to every mixer, but I try to get regular breaks, definitely, and I try, if I can, if there's not a tight deadline, I try to sleep on it and listen to it with fresh ears the next day. I listen to it on different systems as well, different headphones, different speakers, my phone, my little Wi-Fi, Bluetooth speaker. Just to sort of give it a global overview on everything. And but yeah, I think my when I was engineering, I could do maybe 12, 14-hour days, which is a lot. Don't get me wrong, but I definitely can't do that with mixing. I definitely need to. I definitely do shorter days, and I find that, taking regular breaks is really nice. And what's working from home has been quite nice in that respect as well, is that you can be a bit more flexible with your time and how you manage it as well.
Yeah, I can imagine. Okay, there's a couple more questions. Let's have a look.
Mm-hmm.
So there's another question here that was asking about, let me just find that one. I think it was asking about the Fusion. That I think someone was thinking the Ssl Fusion was a plugin. That's actually a piece of hardware.
Oh yeah, that's a hardware. Yeah.
So that's a rack mount piece of hardware, which is. What are the functions of that Fusion again?
So so there's EQ on it. There's a bit of multi-band compression on the top end, which is supposed to be a sort of tape emulation, but it's not really one. But it can give a nice smoothing effects on the sort of top end if you want. There's high pass filters, and there's a bit of imaging on it, so stereo, like widening, which is really nice. If used just like a tiny bit, is usually enough. And there's also a drive function, which is really, really nice to bring things forward without sounding, obviously distorting or like too crazy. So it's a really nice, it's quite a lot of things into one. And I use it for color. I don't use it to correct anything. It's not a corrective box. It's really to color something. So that worked well on the strings. I would sometimes use it on pianos as well. Really nice on like a group of BVs as well. It's nice. It's a really nice piece of kit.
So that's a piece of hardware. Someone, I think Michael in the chat, saying that they think that Acoustica, which is a plugin company from Italy,
they did the plugin version. Oh, it's possibly, yeah. So which I haven't tried. I should try that.
So that might be something people can find a bit more within their budget, hopefully. There's another one here. I think this refers to maybe accepting a mix, or I'm presuming that you don't always accept a mix. And it says here, what are you looking for in music when someone sends you a song?
I mean, I try within sort of reason. I try to not turn down stuff, but I'm really open to a lot of things. I did obviously do a lot of urban music, but like this, for example, the track that I played is pretty different from like Stormzy or Jay, for example. So I'm really open to different genres, and I don't really want to be in doing a certain type of music. I really love doing like a wide genres of music. So what I look like in the track, not anything in particular, just if I like it or not. Like if it gets to me when I listen to it, then that's usually that's it. It doesn't have to be a big artist. It doesn't have to be anything like that. It's just do I like it or not?
Yeah, that sounds pretty like a good answer to me. Let's have a look here. There's another one here. I was wondering what you load up on your master or stereo mix bus plugin wise.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have time to go through that in the.
We could have a quick look
in the session, but let me share the screen again. So on here you can see I've got a bit of SSL, which again doesn't do a lot of compression, and then on really slow attack as well, so it doesn't suffocate the mix.
Well, I think your Pro Tools is interacting with the sound somehow.
I've got a bit of multi-band. Is it?
You're not streaming, so I don't know why, but it's just Pro Tools, obviously.
No. So yeah, a bit of multi-band compression, a bit of EQ, which can be I just use this on this one, but it can be a different, maybe a more colored sounding EQ.
Yeah.
And then limiting, which I love this Vice limiter.
I've not seen that one.
Which is a great one. And then a bit of L2, just to bring it, even though this is quite a gentle track, it still needs to be at a certain level. You know, we're all fighting against loudness, but at the end of the day, if my track is not as loud as the next one, so we don't like the idea, but we all have to make the tracks loud. So that's you know, the usual suspects. And then I also use the Pro L2 fab filters, which I really like.
Great limiter.
As a limiter. And then reference that we seen to check the reference, that's always there. I mean, I take it off when I bounce and stuff, but, and then a bit of VUs to just check how loud I am. And yeah, that's not too crazy on this. I use ozone as well on more like pop tracks.
So, Manon, am I right in thinking that you're kind of mastering this track, or is that stuff that you put on as a then it would go to a mastering engineer? Or?
No, that would go to a mastering engineer. So,
can you, I think if you stop sharing the screen.
The thing is that when you send a mix, it has to be at
Yeah, I think the audio is better without the screen.
Yeah, the thing is yeah, my connection is not that strong.
Yeah.
But when I'm sending a mix for approval, it has to be at a master level. What
would that be on your VU meter there?
On my VU, it would be sort of roughly at -8 RMS.
The average,
which is pretty much -8 LUFS. If you I've lost you. All right. If you talking about LUFS. So it's just if people are sort of referencing the mixed against other tracks that are already out, it needs to be, you know, in the same ballpark. And then if when I'm sending the pre-master to mastering, I would take off those last two limiters. So I would leave the SSL, the L3, and the EQ on, and take out the limiting to leave room for the mastering engineer to do. You know.
But you have mastered stuff yourself as well, though, right?
Yes, yeah.
Dave's album Psychodrama that you mastered, is that correct?
Yes, yeah, and I do now master other like stuff as well, which I really like the process of it, taking someone else's track, and I approach it a bit like mixing. So I usually do a bit more maybe than traditional mastering. I maybe do a bit of like parallel. I use that culture vulture again on masters, you know, if they need it. Obviously, if they don't need it, they don't need it. But yeah, a bit more. So I really do enjoy that as well.
I was just wondering as well, just from a personal point of view, when you've worked on a track for so long and you've mixed it, then having to master it, do you not find that's a little bit tricky? Because you kind of feel like you've kind of finished it already. You know, you've got to try and stick your mastering on top of it as well. How do you approach that kind of situation?
Yeah, I know. It wasn't particularly an easy thing to do, definitely. Yeah. And especially on an album, I think I would prefer like mastering tracks that I've mixed. If it's a single track or an EP, is cool. But yeah, definitely on an album, I would prefer now if someone else sort of fresh ears takes over. But you know, in Psychodrama, it was how things turned out, and yeah, and I'm really happy that I did it as well, because that sort of opened the door into that mastering world a little. So yeah, I'm really happy that I did it in the end.
Yeah. So well, it's been a real pleasure and a privilege to have you here.
Thank you.
I've certainly learned a lot. Kind of inspired me a little bit as well, if I'm honest.
Oh,
So
thank you.
It's been a real pleasure. Hopefully we'll be able to get you to come back at some point and perhaps
Yeah, I would love that.
Do another masterclass for us.
Mm.
So I'm gonna say thank you very much from myself and also all the students, I'm sure. And I'm going to hand us back to Ssl now, who's I think going to round up the session for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Great. Yeah. I think all I want to add is as well, like, thank you so much to you, Manon, for joining us. I think it was really, really interesting, and I think it was really valuable for all the students as well. And thank you to you as well, Jason,
Amazing.
for.
Yes, thank you. Thank you both. Yeah.
Pleasure.
And thank you to Ariana as well on that note for asking the question.
And everyone that tuned in.
Exactly. Just maybe the last maybe the last thing, where can people find you on social media, for example, if they want to follow you now after this session?
Yes, I'm on I have a website which is probably the easiest way to find because it's manongrandjean.com. But then if you want to follow me on Instagram, I don't do a lot of posts, but just the stuff that I'm doing, what I'm working on, the occasional cat pic because I've got a cat. but yeah, and I think it's I don't even know what my thing is. I think it's Manon Grandjean or Grandjean Manon. Let me check. This is how much I'm good at.
I think it's
control, obviously.
I think it's the other way around. It's Grandjean Manon, I think.
Yes, that's right. That's the one on Instagram, which is the one that I'm the most on now. I'm not really on Twitter anymore. And Instagram, I think, is good to see what I'm up to. It's a good one for that.
Great. So to all students, do go ahead and follow her. Great.
Oh no, you don't have to.
Brilliant. Great. Thank you so much to everyone who tuned in as well. And we hope to see you soon again. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Manon.
Bye.
Bye.